seems like there is a kink, there is a bit of an inflection point in what we're about to see in terms of innovation.
So in terms of what we're going to cover today, we'll do a bit of introductions to ourselves, a bit of introduction to Ben if you don't know about us. We've just released what we think is a really great report by the team around the trends that we're seeing in 2025 for global benefits. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then obviously the big topic is AI and innovation and benefits and what we're seeing. And it'll be just a bit of a conversation with Seb and I in terms of how the trends are evolving and the things that we're seeing in the market. In terms of a quick introduction, if you don't know who we are or what Ben is, so I'm David, one of the founders of the company, and my background is in payments and financial services and in wealth. And something that I did a lot in before Ben was talking to a lot of clients around the advice gap, and thinking through how can companies put things out there that are actually walking individuals through what kinds of financial products they should be picking. And it's something that we think a lot about here at Ben, and arguably is even worse in benefits. I also have a background in corporate innovation, helping companies like Standard & Poor's and UBS and HSBC releasing new digital products, and obviously for the last 5 years have been focused on benefits. Maybe Seb, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Seb, I'm David's co-founder. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 15 years almost, previously in the travel industry, obviously very different. Now in B2B for the last 5-6 years, benefits, very, very excited. I have a technical background. I actually looked it up, believe it or not, I'm a published author on a machine learning paper. That was a long time. Yeah, exactly. So that's now more relevant than ever, so that's fun. And I look after product here at Ben, so excited about the conversation today.
Amazing. Cool. So I guess we'll start with a bit of, if you don't know Ben, what we do, who we are. We've been around for about 6 years, and we think of ourselves as the world's first intelligent benefits platform. So obviously really relevant in terms of the conversation that we're going to have today. And I figured maybe we start with a little bit of that, right? So what do you, we were having a fun conversation yesterday talking about what do we think talking benefits are, believe it or not. And so I just figured to pose the question as what is an intelligence benefit platform? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so it's a term we've been throwing around quite a lot and really like. So we've been thinking a lot about how will benefits evolve, how will platforms evolve, and this notion of platforms becoming intelligent, that seems like exactly the thing we've been looking for a long, long time. And so when I talk to the product teams about what we're building and what we're excited about, I often talk about talking benefits. Imagine a benefit actually came to life and it could talk to you. And you could talk to the benefit and ask it questions. And it would remind you of certain things, and it would get in touch at the right point in time. So that feels like exactly the type of thing that is now happening and that we're super excited about.
Yeah, so if you take anything away from the webinar, maybe think about a talking benefit.
Talking benefit.
And what that is. I guess with that, right, we love to start the conversation a little bit with just a couple quick fire questions. So maybe you take the first one,
Yeah, I mean, so thinking about the last few weeks and months, anything particularly interesting you've come across, David? You read a lot?
Yeah, I mean, obviously because it's quite topical, right, around AI and things. So if you haven't heard the news in the last couple of days, really, a new model came out from China, from this company called DeepSeek, and it basically wiped out close to $1 trillion in value of US market cap companies, mostly from NVIDIA and things like that. And it's just really remarkable, right? If you think about when ChatGPT was released, OpenAI, that's about 2 years in the making. It's just impressive how quickly this is actually advancing, right? And I remember us talking about in the early days, how is this going to impact benefits? What's the change that's going to drive? And in the beginning, as most of you probably were quite skeptical, right? But it's really amazing to see how these models, large language models, are just improving at such a rapid pace. And that's obviously why we're here today, to talk a little bit about that. And that's just a really impressive development that's happened over just the last couple of days, really. So I thought that was fascinating, and we're going to see way more of that.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. You often, they always say, in the short run, you probably overestimate, in the long run you underestimate, and it feels like we're hitting that sort of scaling curve, where all of a sudden it just keeps improving, which is very impressive.
And the applications of it as well, right? So I think, as ever with new technologies and things, a lot of times it can feel for a hammer looking for a nail, and so it's really cool to see, you know, how are people actually using this stuff in the wild, and obviously that's something that we're going to talk a little bit about today.
Yeah. Maybe another quick icebreaker.
Yeah.
Something you learned from a customer, like you talk to our customers a lot.
I do, yeah. So I spend a lot of the week kind of chatting to our customers, to potential prospects. One of the things that always surprised me, or that I'm thinking a lot in the last couple of weeks, is just how tricky it is for benefits managers and for folks to actually communicate effectively about the benefits that you offer. And counterintuitively, or not, right, just the richer the package it is, sometimes the harder it is to communicate, right, what you offer and what you have. We've been talking to, you know, a large global tier 1 bank about this, and their challenge isn't really necessarily even about administration or thinking through global benefits design. It's just how do you communicate what you offer in a way that actually engages the employees. And again, it's something that we think a lot about, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about today. But it's a really exciting kind of area where, you know, you can actually do this at scale now. So yeah, that's something interesting that I learned with the customer today.
Very cool.
I guess in the same vein, right, Seb, what are you excited about maybe over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so what's keeping me busy right now, so we are about to go live with one of our largest customers, actually. It's a global pharmaceutical manufacturer, and like we took over from an existing company, and it's going live like from contract signature within 6 weeks. So like
I know we're covers, but even that is it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so like literally like out there, like the teams are buzzing, and it'll be exciting.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So I guess with that, what we'd love to do, as we mentioned early on, right, we've just released the Global State of Benefits report for 2025, and I'd just love to go through a couple of these different points with you guys that we thought, at least for us, were particularly fascinating as we were digging into the data. So maybe starting with one that is quite interesting around what we're seeing with well-being, right, and well-being benefits. So well-being has been a buzzword in the benefit space for, you know, arguably the last decade or so, and you would think that companies are investing more and more into this. And if you talk to the well-being providers, that's definitely like the narrative. What we see in the Ben platform for, you know, the hundreds of employers who are using Ben is that actually in 2025, 2024, there's a bit of a decrease in companies that are spending in well-being benefits. We think there's a variety of factors that are driving this, but mainly if you work in the industry and if you don't live under a rock, you know that all the costs of, you know, what we call the foundational benefits, medical insurance, life insurance, pensions are just going through the roof, right? And especially if you live in, say, if you're in the UK or in some of the markets where you're also getting cost pressures from changes in the tax regimes, this is definitely, we feel like, driving down the ability for companies to spend in well-being benefits. And the thing that is, I think, remarkable or interesting here is, obviously there is a counterweight in this, in that the less that you invest in today in terms of preventative care, well-being, which should be a really long-term driver of a decrease in these things, and something that companies, I think, will struggle with over the next couple of years. So it's really, you know, we talk a lot about how can you make sure that you have the right benefits in place, so you're doing right towards your long-term kind of cost containment strategy, right, and not thinking very short-term. But we see a lot of companies who are really struggling with this and like putting this a bit in the back foot. I guess another thing that has come out from the Global Benefits Report is just how challenging it's been for companies to focus on employee engagement. And it's something that we think a lot about, is engagement even actually a metric that you should be focusing on when it comes to benefits? I know that I myself don't want to engage particularly much with benefits, right? You don't want people to be able to be claiming on medical insurance a lot. You don't want people to be kind of just clicking around for no reason. So it's really about thinking about meaningful engagements, right? And that's what we think a lot about when we're talking to customers around what kind of benefits they should offer and why they should do it. We also think that engagement in general is somewhat of a poor metric for tracking the success of benefits, right? We really want to talk about appreciation and about meaningful engagement rather than like the utilization. We always give the example of, you know, if you think about maybe there are a couple of people in the organization who have accessed say a fertility product or an adoption product or something like that, and you're not going to see a lot of engagement across your entire population, but for those that do engage, it might be the most meaningful thing that they do, right? So it's something that we see a lot of companies struggling with.
Yeah, and I mean, knowledge about benefits, right? Like, as in, it is hard to understand what's actually contained in these benefits. So being able to measure, as David says, like meaningful engagement and not just like mere clicks, but like employees knowing what's on offer so that it's right there for them, like at the right time. Like it's something we think about a lot from a product point of view.
Absolutely. So those are some of the things that we wanted to highlight. There's a lot more in the report. So if you haven't accessed it yet, feel free to go to our website, look at it, and sort of go download it today. It's packed, I think, with a lot of interesting things that we found by going through the data and talking to a lot of people out there. Cool. So I think let's get into the meat and potatoes of the session today, right? Which is, again, AI. It's a hot topic everywhere, not just in benefits. And we've been spending a lot of time thinking about how is this impacting the industry and what's it going to do. And so I guess before we go into some of the trends that we're seeing, it's really a good opportunity. You mentioned you're a published author when it comes to machine learning papers and things like, what's the big deal with AI? Like, why are we all talking about this?
Yeah, it's actually a bit of an old hat, but like, so AI has been around almost as long as computers, like 60, 70 years. Like the idea of getting a machine to solve a problem for you, like we've been doing this for a long time. And so people often ask, and like we often ask ourselves, like what's the big change? Like why is it now all of a sudden blowing up and so interesting? So the paradigm for a long, long time has been, you give a problem to a machine and you expect an exact answer, right? Read my number plate. Like they do that really well. You go on the M25, trust me, they read your number plate fantastically well. And face recognition, things like that. Like that's where you want an exact answer with an error margin. The big change, I believe, like that we saw with like ChatGPT being released into the wild a few years ago was all of a sudden you don't expect machines to be right, but they become smart in the sense of they understand human language. They seem to be able to almost like reason a little bit. And the big paradigm shift is you move to a world where you don't expect the thing to do exactly what you want, but it becomes a co-pilot. It talks to you. And that's something we're really excited about, and we see lots of other people being excited about it as well. All of a sudden you have this smart thing that you can talk to, and it doesn't give you the exact right answer, but you can refine it. And it's examples like you drop a bunch of bullet points into a text editor and it writes you an essay, and you go, well, change this, change that. Like that is the new paradigm. And it's not just about write me the essay and expect it to be perfect.
Yeah, I think it's something that I was hearing somebody talk about the other day, which really resonated with me. Which it's kind of thinking about if you had somebody in the team, right? So this co-pilot sort of narrative really makes a lot of sense in the sense of if you gave, say, a brief, right, to somebody in your team around, hey, please do this for me. If they didn't come up with the right answer on the first time, you wouldn't just say, hey, I'm not going to trust this person ever again, right? You would probably give them a few pointers, right, and maybe tweak this, tweak that, and that's really, I think, what the power of these technologies can do is that you can train it, make it a little better, and give it by feeding it more context, getting better results, right? And it's something that was really difficult before.
Yeah, and it's also something, and we'll talk about it a little bit, that's obviously disconcerting because all of a sudden these things are in the wild and they're not always right. Yeah. And especially in the beginning, like they did some funny, not so funny stuff where they went off track, but that's getting a lot better as well.
So maybe with kind of thinking through that and all these advancements in the technology itself, like again, what are we here to discuss is how will it actually impact benefits in what we do on a daily basis. What I'm personally really excited about is how will it actually impact members, right? How will it impact employees? And we've talked a little bit about earlier when we were talking about the global benefits trends, but we think that by their very nature, benefits are sometimes low engagement products, right? As in, again, you're talking about health insurance, medical insurances, life insurances, pensions, depending on your life stage and where you are and how much you need these are inherently low engagement. And we think that the truth is that a lot of employees don't think super deeply about these things. So one of the things that we are super excited about, how can you decompose these into the elements within that matters and then communicate that in a meaningful way to employees. And how can you actually use these technologies so employees don't have to engage, right? So in my financial services world, the thing that we're always going after is this concept of self-driving money, meaning like you don't want to think about your finances, right? You just want it to be sorted for you. And we believe that's very true in benefits as well. Like a lot of employees don't want to think about their medical plans and what would happen in case of death in the family. And so it's about how do you just make sure that this stuff is sorted and make sure that the recommendations are right. right? So that's something that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and that's where like this paradigm comes in. Like all of a sudden, these machines can read and understand, and so if they can dig into a benefit and like pull out the bits that are actually underneath from policies, like that's hugely exciting, because you mentioned the knowledge gap earlier. Like that's exactly where we can focus.
Yeah, and nobody reads policy documents, right?
Yeah.
Not nobody, but people engage in different ways. And so we think that the majority of employees aren't there waking up in the morning and being like, hey, let me go and read the IPID on a life insurance document. Like, that's just not the way that people think.
Yeah. So the thing I'm excited about is if you think of the reward managers, benefits managers, like they deal with so much complexity. Like it's a high stakes job because benefits impact payroll, they impact lives. It's important to get them right. In some of our customers, you have a ton of complexity, right? You have global markets, you have different regulation in different places. And we believe that AI can actually make the folks dealing with benefits inside companies much more impactful. Not just remove admin, like that's almost a given, but if you think of this co-piloting, like there will be a smart agent like interacting with you, telling you, hey, in Italy there's this change happening, you should be looking at this. You might be not compliant on your policy over there. Like I can imagine so many use cases where a ton of value can be driven by AI. And that obviously also matters to companies as a whole, because you'll be able to not just articulate what you want in terms of benefits, but you can almost tell the machine your strategy. Like I want my benefits program to drive this outcome. And we believe that eventually, like an agent will be able to be watching over that in the background, which is something that's new and exciting.
Absolutely. I guess like with that, right? So again, we think that technology can really impact both the member, the employee experience, as well as the admin side. I think it'd be really interesting to go through some of the examples and some of the conversations that we're having with our customers around, how will this actually add value today and in the future? And we think AI is really going to drive a change around how employees are able to engage with their benefits, how employees can ask questions around their benefits, how members can get to really the information that they need as quickly as possible. Because again, we don't think that engagement on the benefits platform or on the benefits themselves is a particularly good metric to be going after, but it's about meaningful engagement. It's about giving access and transparency to the employees when they need it most. So we've been talking to another large global bank around how they do this, and their challenges around like the understanding, right, and this understanding gap. And we think that AI can be a really powerful lever to do this. We even see it in the data today, right? So we think the world is moving from where a benefits platform might be a lot of different tiles, right? With a life insurance communication tile, or a health insurance communication tile, or a lifestyle spending account tile, into a world where it's around kind of employees interacting with their benefits in a meaningful way by asking them questions and saying things like, hey, I have this issue, can you tell me where to go? Instead of having to actually click through the tiles, click through the documents, and getting the information in a very laborious way.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what the best UI will be? Like right now, people are very excited about conversational interfaces, but even just like surfacing more granular elements of benefits and having a discovery experience, we're working on some really cool stuff there.
Yeah, it's a really good point, right? So again, chatbots have been around for a while, right?
Yeah.
Seb and I were talking about this the other day. I remember 10, 15 years ago when chatbots were all the rage the first time around. And obviously this time is different, right? Because you have a much powerful underlying model behind the scenes, but it's still a question mark. Do you want to be asking a ton of questions? And is that the way they actually want to engage with their benefits?
Yeah,
right?
we talked like travel, right? Like do you want to book a trip through a chatbot, or do you just want to like do 3 clicks and like book your hotel room or your airplane seat?
Yeah.
I think the jury is out, right?
Yeah, which is, again, something that we need to think about a lot, because for some people it'll be the right way to engage, but not for everybody. So that's something that I'm really seeing. What about you, Seb?
Yeah, so if you think about these large language models, like something they can do really well is generate a lot of stuff, right? Like we've seen that. And so I was talking to one of our larger German customers yesterday, and we were just sort of talking about how benefit communications could look like in the future. And she said, well, if you had a tool where I can just say, well, your pension plan has changed and the prices have gone up, and I just drop that info into an editor, and the system generates the communications, maybe even segmented by the relevant demographics, like those who have the benefit versus not, maybe those are the different variant of it. She was, well, that would save me like 2 weeks' time. And that makes a ton of sense, and it feels like a million questions, right? Like how do you make sure the generating engine doesn't go off script, and you can still keep control, but it feels like something will have to be built in that space because that has just so much potential. And if you think about, in most companies, you still have a lot of, manuals and PDFs and documents and guides and all of that stuff where you communicate benefits. That should be a thing of the past in the future, because we can generate these on the fly, and they'll always be up to date, they'll always be correct, and they might even be more personalized. So that's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I think in the similar vein, right? So a lot of companies, we spend a lot of time think about how do they make sure that their benefits communications represent their internal tone of voice, right? And things like that. And that is something that an LLM should be really good at, isn't you feed them, hey, examples, this is what great looks like for my company.
Yeah.
Please can you take this insurance document or something like that and make the communications feel like they're actually communicated by us. So that should be something that's really, really powerful. And as we say, right, the clue's in the name, as in we're in the age of generative AI. So anything that you can do there instead of having to do manually should add a lot of value. An area that I'm really personally excited about, and Sebastian, when you talked a little bit about this at Reba, is benefits design is complex still, right? So especially as you were saying earlier, like if you think about, as a benefits manager, I need to understand, a pension plan in the UK, what is a 401k in the US, what is a superannuation in Australia, how do all of these products work? And it's difficult. It's generally difficult, right? Even though the types of products are similar, they work very differently, right? How do you understand tax? How do you communicate this to employees? And so one of the things that we're really excited about is a lot of this information we find is captive, meaning that it's not freely available online and you have to go digging to find this, right? But we're really excited about surfacing this and making it easily accessible. So we see a world in which you as a benefit manager should be able to again, talk to a co-pilot and say, hey, this is what my employee demographic looks like, this is where I want to be between a market median or really great, and get recommendations around the types of benefits, the types of things that you should be thinking about offering, instead of having to dig through a 100-page report to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, and what does the future here look like, right? Like, again, you mentioned DeepSeek and like these models accelerating so much. There has to be a future where like I can just drop a bunch of documents into a machine. Here's my demographic data, here's my claims data, here are my populations, here's a bunch of information, and the machine would be like, well, here's your benchmarking, like here's where you're strong, here's where you potentially, where there's need for improvement, this is getting used, this is not getting used. Like that's exactly what these machines will be really, really good at. And again, like sort of tying with the previous point, it's just going to make those folks who are dealing with the strategies, who are building these programs, so much more impactful. And I think we're just going to see much better programs as a consequence.
Yeah, I think instead of spending time having to find information, you want to be thinking about how does this apply to your own context, right? And that's something that we're really excited about. And again, making this really easily accessible. We're just starting to release new versions of our employee benefits guides in a lot of different countries, and we don't want this information to be captive with consultants or folks, but making it freely accessible for you to be able to query.
Yeah, to give an example, so we're using a model internally, a large language model that is beginning to do that. Like we call it BenDB, like it is trained on what we know about benefits, and we're putting in latest regulation and like our sort of information base. And it's getting really good, right? Like, so we have internal consultants, benefits designers, and they're using it as a co-pilot, and they're reporting that it's very useful. Like it saves you the Googling, it saves you the research, and as David mentioned, like nobody can know everything, and like regulation changes. I don't know off the top of my head how South African life insurance works, but the thing does, right? And so happy days.
Machines should be really good at this, right?
Exactly,
so,
exactly right.
Yeah. What other things are you saying?
Yeah. So something I was thinking about last night. So one thing customers complain about is that changes to benefits programs are hard, right? Like if you think about a renewal, you change a plan option, you change a price, that's actually a bit of a nightmare because it has to filter through the entire user base, like people are confused. It's quite easy to get it wrong, it impacts payroll, then if that's wrong, it needs another payroll correction. So this idea of using artificial intelligence to make configuration changes easier. So what we've been doing, and this is really cool. So one of our implementation specialists just recorded a call, like with a customer, obviously with their consent, like in terms of, it was a kickoff call regarding requirements gathering, took the transcript, dumped it into one of our internal models that we used to generate the software, and the machine just basically built the platform for them, right? So it got to like a 70-80% version of all the benefits there without any intervention. So like this idea of you can build something in minutes rather than days and days and weeks, like waiting for implementation specialists, I think that's super powerful. And it's going to make change requests a thing of the past. Because like we know that currently enabling HR admins, reward leaders to actually make changes to platforms themselves is a bit tricky because of the unintended consequences. But in a world where the intelligent machines and agents can do it, that's a real opportunity. So like that's a bit nerdy, but like it's something we're really excited about because it makes our implementation so much faster, right? Like we have gone from months in some cases to like days of seeing a finished system and being able to show it to a customer. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like, and we think about a lot. How can that make our teams more efficient as we're implementing requirements for our customers, but ultimately also pushing this out to admins themselves, right? So the idea of, hey, you can go into the system, and instead of you spending a lot of times in a form putting together drop downs or uploading a rate table or so, you can literally query the system and say, I am about to launch a life insurance benefit in South Africa, please create it for me, and the system will just do it. And that's super, super exciting, right? Because instead of taking you weeks or months to be able to deliver a benefit in that location, it'll just know the workflows and actually build it for you, which is really exciting. I think, we've been running for about half an hour, so I think it'd be cool to just talk about, okay, hey, here are some of the things that we're seeing with our customers. What are the implications? What are the things that companies should think about, right? So maybe, we started with you. Is there anything that you think companies should be thinking about as they seek to apply the AI?
Yeah, so I think, and we've been thinking about this a lot. So for a long time, benefits management platforms were like a bit of a nice to have in terms of like, it's a SaaS platform and you have benefits on it. And yes, you can manage contributions and you can manage enrollments and so on. But a lot of this stuff you can still do in a spreadsheet. Like it's very laborious. Of course, like if you go global and if you go very, very flexible, like that's already been a big tipping point. But the stuff that's about to come, like that David was talking about in terms of employees navigating personalized benefits, employees discovering inside benefits, you cannot do this without a platform. So I think it's a really important point in time to think about, is this the time to bring in a platform, right? Like it doesn't have to be Ben, but like something intelligent that actually makes you even more impactful at your job and generates better benefits programs. Like I think that should be at the top of mind.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, right? As in, if you think about most benefits platforms, they're called Ben admin systems, right? So they're just doing the administration, right? Basically taking data from employees, reshuffling, and then getting it out to providers or the payroll. And the truth is, with these kinds of technologies, like a platform can do so much more, right? And then that's what we're really, really excited about. In the same vein, something that we were talking about is, is it for you, right? Like we think that the AI can add value to any company, regardless of where they are in their journey, all the way from the communications of simple benefits to driving meaningful engagement or utilization of them. But is it something that you can take advantage of, right, depending on where you are in the journey? We're also surprised still by how backwards the entire industry is in a way, as in the industry still, I always say when I'm talking to customers and prospects, right, in the age of Gen AI, you're still kind of shuttling spreadsheets back and forth, right, between different elements or doing everything over email. And sometimes like taking that full step into even digitizing benefits is a great first step, and never alone making them flexible or bringing AI to drive even more meaningful engagement with it.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about this last night, regardless where you are in your journey, like whether it's getting rid of paper forms and like wet ink, or whether it is pushing the boundary like from an existing digital experience to like something even more engaging, it seems like there is a kink, there is a bit of an inflection point in what we're about to see in terms of innovation. So now might be the time to leapfrog, which is fun.
Yeah, I think I just saw a question here from Darren, which is talking about, maybe I'll just read his question and then we can kind of go into it. So Darren asks, this is obviously hugely exciting, but also worrying as the role of advisors, employee benefits consultants could become obsolete if AI can perform many of the tasks we currently do for our clients. How do you see AI working with the advice industry rather than replacing it?
So I mean, this is a personal opinion, but like I believe there will always be a need for humans being involved in advice. And like there's much more to it than just sifting through data and like picking the thing that comes out on top. These are also typically, they're quite low frequency, but very high impact decisions. Like as a company, I will pick a new provider maybe once a year, once every 3 years. Like I will, so just relying on a machine, like I just can't see that happening. What I do see happening is advisors becoming super powerful, like they will have superpowers and they'll be able to service more clients and drive a lot more impact. Like that's my, maybe rose tinted, but like I think like very realistic view on it.
Yeah, I think it's about efficiency, right? Like we're not at a stage where, and I think a lot of people are doing, AI doom scrolling to a certain extent. Like if you talk to AI leaders, which we spend a lot of time talking to folks who are really innovating in the foundational layer, we're quite far away, right, from AI being able to replacing humans in every of these tasks, and we think that includes consultants and advisors as well. And we think it is a critical piece of the puzzle. So it's really about how do you drive more efficiency and more impact rather than replacing, right? And we think that's going to continue over the next decade, right? It's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
Awesome. A couple of other questions, right? So one of the things we always get, especially as we're talking to largely very regulated financial services and things, is, hey, this is great. What about data privacy, right? What about security? So maybe, how do we think about this at the vendor? What are we doing?
Yeah, so, I mean, Gen AI has been with us for like best part of like 2-3 years. And like in the beginning, it was obviously a bit of a Wild West, right? Like, so data would be taken to train the models, which isn't great because then you can't really put personal data into it. All of a sudden the machine knows your data. So it's all about segregating the data and like making sure you work with trusted sub-processors. So if you think of the likes of like Amazon Web Services or so, like they are the ones that everybody trusts already to host data in a secure way and in a compliant way. They now offer these services. And most importantly, we can have the models be ring-fenced from anybody else. So for example, for our features that we are beginning to use with clients, the data will never leave the model. It will not even train the model. So it will purely be used like in their own sandbox. And like we feel very confident about this, but it's a hugely important point.
Yeah, I think, I was talking to one of our engineers, and the thing that sometimes that really resonated with me as we're talking about this topic is if you think about the Ben platform, it does a lot more than just kind of consumer ping the API for an AI model, right? So it's really about, like, if you think about from a data privacy standpoint, you can totally decompose the personal information, right? The PII from the individual, from the question that is being asked from these foundational models. So we think that's a really interesting way of thinking about it, because the AI doesn't know who the employer is, who the employee is, what data is attached to them, and that's something that comes back to us, and we feed that back into the system, right? But we think that really protects and segregates things, as Seb was talking about, from a data privacy point of view, and should be alleviate a lot of these concerns when I am talking to globally regulated industries, etc. So I think that's a really interesting way to think about it and make sure that you are putting those measures in place.
Yeah, there are different levels of appetite among our customers, right? Like some are like, yeah, please, like use every motion of the mouse and every click from the employee to personalize and to gain information. Go into the HRS and like do use if they are married, not married, if they have kids, how old they are, where they work, to surface the right stuff. And then others are like, please don't do that. Yeah. And it's about being very explicit, and it's something we think about a lot in terms of like where do you draw the line. And it's a trade-off, right? Like, more data will make these experiences more relevant.
Yeah. So speaking about relevance, right? So we already talked a lot about communications, engagement, and one of the segments or types of companies that we're working on even more is folks who have deskless or remote workers, right? So people who are in the field who might not have access to a computer, might not be engaging on a daily basis, being in front of screens. Like, how would we think that AI can actually help to drive engagement, meaningful engagement for these types of individuals? Maybe you.
I mean, I can start maybe. So obviously, they need a mobile experience, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like that's really important, and we've got some really interesting prototypes in terms of like how the experience becomes more relevant for them, like on the mobile, and that we have a lot of paradigms from B2C, right? Like we use Instagram, we use e-commerce, and that becomes very natural on mobile. I think with desk workers, there's often also the challenge of traditionally they don't necessarily have that many benefits, and an AI system like being able to pull out information from existing benefits that might even be policies, right? That can still be immensely valuable. Like that is something that I find really exciting.
Yeah, and as we were talking about this the other day, right? So it's quite interesting that arguably these are the folks who might need it most, right? Because again, they don't. It's not like they have a lot of disposable income a lot of the time. So financial advice, right? Mental health, like all these things really, really matter. And it's a bit of a shame that they're the ones who kind of engage the least with these types of products, right? And it might be either existing things that you already do as a company and making sure that the communication really is on point for when they need it, but also taking advantage of things that are freely available, right? Or things that are included as part of other kinds of benefits. So one of the things that a lot of companies will miss sometimes is, you might have an employee assistance program that is bundled into a life insurance, and because you're offering the life insurance to say folks that work in corporate, you can also make that freely available to the folks that are in the field, right? So it's thinking a little bit differently about that, and pulling in from publicly accessible sources as well. Even things like the money advice service in the UK, or a lot of mental health services as part of the NHS, and that's something that we're excited about because it's again just getting the help to that employee when they need it most. And it doesn't matter if you as a company are providing it or if the employee is able to access that. You just make them accessing it much easier, right? So that's something that we're thinking a lot about. Maybe we take a couple more and then when we break. We've been going for about 40 minutes, so we'll probably take a couple of more questions here. One of the things that we've been spending a lot of time thinking about as well is how does it drive optimization when it comes to cost, when it comes to value, right? So like, what are the things that we think that AI can do in terms of driving more value to companies and utilizing data in interesting ways? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to guide employees down the right path, and in terms of what's optimal for them, but also with an eye on cost. Like, it's something you talk a lot about as well.
Yeah. So I guess to that point, right? How do you? There's a lot of services that are offered for free or be relatively low cost that like an employee doesn't necessarily need to go and claim, right, from a medical insurance. And so how do you point them into the right clinical pathways so that you are managing cost effectively? And we don't think that companies are doing that particularly effective today. So pointing folks to potentially low-cost services first, or preventative services, right? If you think the drivers of premium increases, things like mental health, MSK, and those sorts of things, how do you make sure that you are driving engagement into those preventative for those who need the most, so that they won't actually claim on your insurance products and the premiums won't go up, right? So it's something that we're really excited about, and we think AI can be particularly good at that. The other thing that is, it's reporting, right? Like, if you think about benefits, it's ultimately it's a data problem, right? So how do we think about that, and how can AI help?
Yeah, I mean, we often say internally, like, benefits is a data problem. Like, it is something you present on the basis of data. You take choices in. It's all about numbers, and you pass them to providers, and then ultimately they end up in your reporting. And that's something that AI is really good at, right? Like, it's good at data, it's good at spotting trends, for example, right? Like spotting when things are being used that shouldn't be used, when you have cost overruns in certain parts, spotting things that you might be paying for that are just not particularly popular. So I can definitely see a world where AI makes those, like, looking at efficiency much more impactful by being able to spot trends that might be hard to see otherwise.
And I think the other thing that is interesting about that, if you think about most systems, right, when it comes to the reporting side, you have to figure out what's the report that you want, right? You need to drag columns into place. You need to reformat the data to make it accessible. And this should be something that you'd be able to query your system to do, right? As in, hey, I'm tracking benefits engagement, or I'm tracking cost utilization. Can you generate me a report that looks at these 5 key metrics, right? And the system should just be able to spit that out for you. That's hugely exciting, I think.
And again, like, looking at how fast this is moving, like, there will be a world where you go in and you just ask the question.
Yep.
Right, like, hey, can you please tell me how the engagement with my medical policy in Italy is? Like, please show me the cost development, please show me this, that, and the other. And we might not be there yet, but this is developing super, super fast. And that's the type of interaction that's going to give much more meaningful insight.
And it's amazing for us to see, like, we get a ton of requests, as you might imagine, right, from our customers being like, hey, can I see this? Can I get this type of report? Can I do that? And instead of customers having to either do it themselves or ask us for it, they should be able to go into the system and just query it.
Let the AI
do it. Let the machine do it. That's right. Cool. I think we'll probably cut it here. Any kind of final thoughts or things you want to leave the audience with?
This is exciting. So we've been building in this space for the last 6 years or so, and you have changes. Like, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. You have changes like once every 10, 15, 20 years that really make a big difference. The last one I recall is mobile.
Yeah.
My first business was built on the premise that things would shift from desktop to mobile. We were a travel business and we were doing mobile deals. And
it happened.
It did happen. It gave us Instagram and Uber and Deliveroo and stuff like that. And obviously, in many ways, AI can be 10x that. But it feels like we're living through a super exciting time. Hold on to your seats. This is happening.
Yeah, I think for 10 years or so, people were wondering, what's the next paradigm shift, right?
Yeah.
Is it the metaverse? Is it
chatbots?
Crypto? Is it chatbots?
Yeah.
And we can see that in the data that this AI thing is here to stay and it's real.
Yeah.
And we're obviously super excited about. Hope you are as well. And if you have any questions or things want to talk through it, please go through, chat to the team. You have our LinkedIn emails. I think our contact information is there.
Drop us a line anytime. Very happy.
Amazing. Yeah. So thanks for dialing in, everybody. Hopefully you find the conversation interesting. We're going to be trying to do this on a semi-regular cadence. So get in touch if you have questions. If you want to talk more about it, we're always here to nerd out on AI and benefits. So have a good Tuesday, a good rest of the week, and hope to see you soon.
Take care. Bye bye.